Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to Dr. Noliza binti Hamir Basah. My name is Nurul Afika binti Asmadi, my treat number 262828. In this video, I will summarize about Chapter 2, International Logistic Infrastructure. In this chapter, there are a few main points, which is 1. Definition of infrastructure, 2. Transportation infrastructure, 3. Communication infrastructure, and 4. Utilities infrastructure. First, definition of infrastructure. Infrastructure is a collective term that refers to all of the elements in place, publicly or privately owned goods to facilitate transportation, communication, and business exchange. Next is transportation infrastructure. In transportation infrastructure, there is port infrastructure, and there are a point in port infrastructure which is depth of water must be 40 feet, which is 13.5 meters, to becoming the standard requirement to access a port. Bridge clearance, the space between bridge and water. Port operations include hours of operation, union rules, and overall organization. And warehousing space, the amount of warehouse storage space, cover, non-cover, refrigerated, influence operations. In port infrastructure, we also can be seen about cranes. Cranes are important in a port's ability to load ever larger ships. Berth, the locations in a port where the ships are loaded and unloaded. Most berths are traditional. Traditional here means ship is loaded from one side only. But in Amsterdam, has an indented berth where ships are loaded from both sides. And port capacity, the ability of a port to handle a certain amount of cargo volume. Many ports are now constrained by their lack of capacity, commonly measured in TEU. This is the example of a traditional container berth and gantry cranes, which is it only ship is loaded from one side only. And this is the indented container berth of the Paragon terminal in Amsterdam, that where ships are loaded from both sides. In port infrastructure, we also learn about connections with land-based transportation services. Ports connections to the remainder of the country's transport infrastructure are critical. Ports are generally between the sea and large cities, for the example, Los Angeles, New York, Santos, and Hong Kong. The strain on road and railroad infrastructures has become the bottleneck of popular ports. Next point is canals and waterways infrastructure. Canals are critical to international transportation. However, they are limited by the size and capacity of their locks. Next, airport infrastructure. In airport infrastructure, there are runways and taxiways. The number, length, and design of the runways determine the type of aircraft and the capacity of an airport. Next point is hours of operation, warehousing space. Some airports are landlocked. For the example, Hong Kong could not expand, Kai-Tak, and build a new airport, Check Lap Kok, on an artificial island instead. And the next example is Subang Airport, which is KLIA. Next, rail infrastructure. This infrastructure means of conveying passengers and goods on wheeled vehicles running on rails. It is also commonly referred to as train transport. Rail vehicles are directionally guided by the tracks on which they run, and the creation of the multimodal container has eliminated the need to load and unload merchandise from the traditional boxcars. Road infrastructure. The quality of road infrastructure can be seen based on the total length of roads, the percentage of these roads that are paved, and capacity, which is bridge, tunnels, volume of traffic. And last, for transportation infrastructure is warehousing infrastructure. Warehousing infrastructure should concern the protection of the goods when they are waiting while in transit. Warehousing is important because from there we can get a few benefits, which is for the example, regular production, which is raw materials need to be stored to enable mass production to be carried on continuously. Sometimes goods are stored in anticipation of a rise in price. Warehouses enable manufacturers to produce goods in anticipation of demand in future. And warehousing also can minimize the risk. This is because warehouses provide for the safe custody of goods. Perishable products can be preserved in cold storage. By keeping their goods in warehouses, businessmen can minimize the loss from damage, fire, theft, and the other bad things to the goods. The goods kept in the warehouse and generally insured. In case of loss or damage to the goods, the owner of goods can get full compensation from the insurance company. Okay, communication infrastructure. In this communication infrastructure, there are two services. One, mail services. Mail services is the ability of the postal services to deliver mail on time, reliably and safely has not been achieved in every corner in the world. 2. Telecommunication services. Primary concern about reliability in some fast-growing countries, and some countries will skip a particular technology to adopt the most recent one available, a policy called leapfrogging. And last thing in this chapter is utilities infrastructure. Utilities infrastructure include electricity, which is electricity is not always reliably available in the world, and water and sewer. Water supply and quality of water is a concern in many countries worldwide, and the infrastructure designed to remove used water is critical and often a problem as well. That's all from me. Thank you.